Today on NewsWatch, nuclear negotiations, why U.S. officials are threatening to walk away from nuclear talks with Iran. Plus,
this country has been one of the neediest countries in the world. It is a cesspool of human suffering.
From civil war to starvation, South Sudan is in constant crisis. See who's rescuing the victims from the brink of death. And taking over Central Park. We'll take you to New York City and show you an event that's aimed at sharing the love of Christ to more than 60,000 people. Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Charlene Aaron. Tens of thousands of Iranians took to the streets of Tehran today, chanting "Death to Israel." Meanwhile, in Austria, Western negotiators and Iranian officials struggle to agree on a deal that would curb Iran's nuclear ambitions. Both sides are digging in as talks enter a crucial and sensitive time. George Thomas has details.
Secretary of State John Kerry says talks with Iran cannot be open-ended.
We are not going to sit at the negotiating table forever.
The Iranians shot back, accusing Kerry and other Western negotiators of constantly changing their positions.
This has made the work difficult.
The U.S. and its partners missed another deadline Thursday, raising doubts on just how close the sides really are to an agreement.
There are difficult problems that we still need to solve.
Chief among them, Iran wants all economic sanctions and a ban on acquiring ballistic missiles to be lifted in return for curbing its nuclear program.
We have said several times before that a deal and sanctions cannot be combined, and they should choose one of them.
Western countries are against lifting the arms embargo. The U.S. considers Iran to be one of the world's leading state sponsors of terrorism. Easing economic sanctions and allowing them to start buying long-range missiles will only embolden the regime.
Those billions of dollars could be funneled to support Iran's battle to establish a Shiite government in Yemen, resupply the Lebanese terror group Hezbollah, and continue to prop up the government of Syrian President Bashar Assad. Many here in Israel and throughout the region believe that would be a high price to pay for a deal.
The U.S. says it will not be rushed into any deal.
We're going to need to see concrete, verifiable progress toward living up to their commitments on the part of the Iranians before sanctions relief related to nuclear weapons is given.
But not everyone is convinced the Iranians are on board.
Iran, by all accounts, still isn't serious about abandoning its nuclear weapons program.
Any final agreement would need the approval of Congress. So far, members of both parties remain skeptical that a good deal can be reached. George Thomas, CBN News.
Calls are escalating for the head of the Federal Office of Personnel Management to step down after the largest cyber attack in U.S. history. Thursday, officials announced that the personal information, including Social Security numbers of more than 19 million people who applied for background checks, was stolen. Information for nearly 2 million of their family members was also compromised. Officials believe China may be responsible for that cyber attack. The director of FBI says the agency stopped several potential acts of terrorism before the July 4th weekend. Federal agents arrested more than 10 people in the month before the holiday. Director James Comey says some of them were planning acts of violence around that weekend, and he warns that the FBI is mostly in the dark about who ISIS is recruiting in the West. It's because they're sending encrypted messages to new internet recruits. The Islamic radicals encourage the potential recruits to come join their caliphate, but if they can't do that, ISIS has another message for them.
If you can't come, kill somebody where you are. Kill somebody in uniform, kill anybody. If you can cut their head off, great. Videotape it. Do it, do it, do it. They're pushing this through Twitter. So it's no longer the case that someone who's troubled needs to go find this propaganda and this motivation. It buzzes in their pocket. So there is a device, almost a devil on their shoulder all day long saying, kill, 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 kill.
Comey says once potential recruits respond to ISIS on social media, the group sends them encrypted messages. The FBI is trying to get help breaking that encryption technology from Silicon Valley. A major change to the South Carolina State House. The Confederate flag is being removed from its pole and moved to the state's relic room. Thursday, Governor Nikki Haley signed legislation to remove the flag. At the signing were the families of the 9 people killed in what police call an act of radical racial hatred at a historic black church in Charleston.
The action of 9 individuals laid out this long chain of events that forever showed the state of South Carolina what love and forgiveness looks like.
The flag has been flown in the South Carolina State House for more than 50 years. A U.S. federal court of appeals has denied Wheaton College a preliminary injunction in their religious objection to Obamacare's contraception mandate. The college will have to notify the government of its refusal to provide contraception, outsourcing that task to the government. The federal court says notifying the government doesn't leave the college with any involvement in the matter. And Houston Baptist University, East Texas Baptist University, and Westminster Theological Seminary are appealing to the Supreme Court to protect them from millions of dollars in fines if they don't comply with the mandate. The court is likely to consider all of the petitions in late September or early October. Kentucky's governor has ordered a county clerk to issue gay marriage licenses, but Clerk Casey Davis says that he cannot be forced to do something that violates his religious beliefs. Now a showdown is shaping up because Democrat Governor Steve Beshear told him he needs to resign if he keeps refusing to issue licenses to same-sex couples. But Davis says he'd rather go to jail first, saying, if that's what it takes for me to express the freedom of religion that I believe I was born with, I'm willing to do that. Meanwhile, in Nebraska, a state ethics committee ruled on religious rights in gay marriage. The committee says judges and court officials can refuse to perform same-sex marriages, but then they can't perform any marriages at all. And in Ohio, a judge is seeking an exemption from performing same-sex marriages. Toledo Municipal Court Judge C. Allen McDonald cited his personal and religious beliefs when he refused to marry a gay couple earlier this week. In a statement, he said, "I apologize to the couple for the delay they experienced and wish them the best." McConnell will continue to perform weddings between men and women while he awaits a decision by a conduct and ethics board. Well, evangelist Luis Palau is covering America's largest city with the gospel. Tomorrow, his ministry takes over New York's Central Park with a festival that has taken 3 years to plan. Our Ephraim Graham caught up with Palau for a look at what it takes to plan an outdoor service for 60,000 people.
It takes days of work and hundreds of people to turn Central Park into center stage for Cityfest, evangelist Luis Palau's latest Christian crusade. We toured with Palau as he sized up final preparations.
It's the largest one I've ever seen that we've used, except maybe Buenos Aires in Argentina was sort of large. This one's so massive. Yeah, very impressive. And the city skyline, that's what really gets you.
The vibrant 80-year-old has personally preached to more than 30 million people in 75 countries. It's taken a long time and a lot of work to bring the good news to the Big Apple. Palau's team partnered with city government and more than 1,700 churches 3 years ago to create City Serve. They then rolled up their sleeves to lift up the city's poorest residents.
Many a pastor has said to me, you know, you unconsciously begin to forget that reaching out in evangelism is what the church really is all about, together with worshiping God and loving one another and serving.
New York City is home to at least 8 million people who speak more than 200 languages. It's the perfect place for God to reap an incredible harvest, yet it takes money to reach them. The price tag for Palau's festival has climbed to more than $10 million.
When you see all the people around, you realize, man, this is not a giveaway. And then when to spread the good news in a city of this size, you need even more. We could have used more and done more.
City restrictions limit the size of festival and concert crowds here in Central Park to no more than 60,000. And even though this event is free, everyone must have a ticket. With that said, Palau and his team ran out of tickets days ago. And for him, that's the one frustration.
60,000 is the maximum that they will allow inside this section of the park, anywhere in the park, in fact. And so that's what we have to live with. I think if it had been open and we could have gone any part of the park, there would have been 250,000 or 500,000.
No matter how many people pack Central Park Saturday, Palau has one prayer when he takes the stage, that many will open their hearts to accept the Jesus he's preaching about.
And in years to come, as we've seen all over the world, we expect to see many a minister, many a leader who was converted as a young person or even a child here and then being used of God in decades to come.
Words spoken from the heart of a man inspired by Billy Graham many years ago. Ephraim Graham, CBN News, New York.
A group of atheists is trying to get rid of a 6-foot statue known as Big Mountain Jesus. A panel of 3 judges will decide the fate of the statue. The atheists asked for it to be removed from the U.S. Forest Service property in Montana. A federal district judge said in 2013 that the Flathead National Forest could let the statue stay by reissuing a permit that lasts for 10 years. The statue has been there since 1954, and the atheists say the statue violates the separation of church and state. The Justice Department says the statue has historical significance and that the Forest Service isn't endorsing a religion. Coming up, it's the world's newest nation and also one of the most unstable. Meet the people trying to end the suffering in South Sudan. Years ago this week, South Sudan became an independent nation after decades of fighting. Many hoped peace would finally take hold, but that hasn't happened. As George Thomas discovered, war has again gripped this new country, leaving thousands of people dead and millions displaced. We do want to warn you that some of the video in this story is disturbing.
These are images from that jubilant day on July 9, 2011, when South Sudan became a new nation. But the celebrations were short-lived.
We never imagined our country would turn out this way.
During the time of independence, there was so much hope and enthusiasm about the prospects of South Sudan moving forward. Years later, this country is engulfed in civil war.
The fighting started in the capital, Juba, in December 2013 after the president accused his vice president of an attempted coup. Soldiers loyal to both men turned on each other. Since then, war has engulfed 7 of the country's 10 provinces.
Too many people are getting killed.
So many, including small children.
How do you feel about
women?
This? Tell me, how do you feel?
No, it's really very bad. I feel sorry as a Southern.
In 4 short years, South Sudan went from the world's newest country to its most fragile.
This country has been one of the neediest countries in the world. It is a cesspool of human suffering. And I wondered if I might close with just a quick prayer.
Rich Stearns is president of World Vision US. His group has been working in South Sudan since 1989. Stearns says the war is leaving a trail of tears and unspeakable human suffering.
It is a terrible place to be a child, a terrible place to be a family in so many ways, because there are so many different threats to your livelihood and your well-being, whether it's food or lack of clean water, lack of sanitary facilities, lack of educational opportunities, lack of economic development, or conflict, as we've seen right now is happening in this country.
Violence committed by both sides is intensifying. The UN says hundreds of girls as young as 8 have been gang raped and murdered. Boys have been castrated and left to bleed to death. Last week, UN investigators accused South Sudanese government soldiers of raping scores of women and girls, then burning them alive.
Well, the spirit of the Independence Day was the spirit of peace. The spirit today is the spirit of conflict.
People aren't working, farmers aren't planting. 2 million people have fled their homes. Many have escaped to neighboring countries. Others live in the bush or swamps.
It's been very disheartening to see the potentially bright future of this brand new country be put on hold.
Meanwhile, tens of thousands have sought protection in UN-run camps like this one on the outskirts of the capital city.
Since the conflict began back in December 2013, the United Nations is now running these POC. They're called Protection of Civilian Sites. This one has roughly about 22,000, but across the 8 sites, there are close to about 130,000 South Sudanese.
Ariane Quentier of the UN says that number is just the tip of the iceberg.
Because we probably have something like 3 million people between refugees and displaced persons who have been affected by this war.
World Vision oversees food distribution at the camp. Ngure Muruti heads the operation and says his team ensures that no one slips through the cracks without food.
They get sorghum, they get beans, they get vegetable oil, and they get salt.
Mary Namon has lived in the camp for nearly 2 years.
I have no other option but to stay here until this war ends.
She's lucky to even have food to eat. Far from the camp, in towns and villages in the war zone, people are dying of starvation. And reaching those in desperate need can be logistically challenging.
Here's a staggering fact for you. South Sudan is roughly the size of the state of Texas, and there are only 200 miles of paved tarmac. So the best way to get to these locations is via plane.
On a recent afternoon,
Sir, one at a time. One at a time, yep, sure. Thank you, sir.
CBN News joined World Vision as they traveled to a remote village far from the capital city. Here, aid workers race frantically to save 250,000 children like Aout, who are suffering from severe malnutrition.
One of the things they do right away is to get an assessment, a physical assessment, but also a weight assessment. Aout is 13 months old, and a typical child at 13 months should weigh roughly about 9 kilograms. Aout right now at 13 months weighs about 5.5.
Nurse Damaris Wanjiku says a combination of therapeutic milk and nutrient-rich foods will keep him and other kids in this village alive.
The mothers go home with the children, then they return every 7 days. And then we take their weight just to monitor the progress, and then we give them more supplies for another week.
The program continues until each child is healthy.
My baby would be dead if it wasn't for this nutritional center. Thank God he's getting better every day.
A glimmer of hope in a young nation spiraling out of control. Despite several attempts at peace, both sides are unwilling to compromise and silence their guns. So for now, the fighting rages on, with tens of thousands dead and no end in sight. For aid groups, it's a battle against the odds to save lives, as experts warn of a catastrophic famine that could affect up to 5 million people. George Thomas, CBN News, South Sudan.
Up next at the movies, find out if anything's a good fit for your family this weekend. Well, the weekend is here, so that means it is time for our regular family-friendly movie reviews with Bob Waliszewski. He's with Focus on the Family's entertainment review department called Plugged In Online. Bob, let's start with the futuristic thriller called Selfless. It's obviously not a movie for kids, but what about for teens and adults?
You know, this movie was quite creative. It's out of the box. Ben Kingsley's character is a very, very wealthy man living in New York City, dying of cancer, who has the funds to go to a new company that he hears about that has come up with a way to transport his mind and his emotions into the body of a much younger man. When that happens, however, it wasn't how it was explained to him ahead of time, and he starts searching for answers. How does it stack up for the family? Well, I gave this one a 2.5 out of 5 for family friendliness, and the reason being, there's the sensuality that lands in the middle somewheres that's problematic. Also, some significant language issues. So putting it all together, it just didn't land very strong on the family friendliness meter.
All righty then. Well, the animated prequel to Despicable Me is out. It's called Minions. Give us the rundown on that film.
Well, as with Selfless, and even more so, I thought this film was incredibly creative. I thought it was funny. I can't remember chuckling as much in an animated film as I did for this one. Essentially, the Minions from Despicable Me had their own film, and we learned that since the beginning of time, they've always wanted to serve some dastardly master. That's their desire. And now fast forward to the 60s, this takes place in the 60s, they're looking for the biggest, baddest, nastiest, most vile master they can find, and they hear about Scarlet, voiced by Sandra Bullock, by the way. And they go to VillainCon, which is cute in its own sense, to try to figure out if they can impress her so that they can serve and idolize her. I didn't exactly count them, but I started listing how many adult-flavored jokes were in this film. Nothing explicit, but this is geared for younger kids. And I know at Focus, at CBN, we have viewers, we have listeners that want to say, spell it out for me, Bob, and I'm spelling it out. Now, I'm not going to say what those wink-wink jokes are, but online, we spell out most of them at our full review. I would recommend for our viewers who are thinking about going to Minions to check out our full review and make sure their comfort level is there. I gave it a 3. That's neither a thumbs up nor a thumbs down.
All right. We are counting on you to always spell it out for us. Thank you so much, Bob Waliszewski, for joining us today.
Charlene.
In health news, if you want to keep your brain healthy as you get older and possibly cut your risk of Alzheimer's or dementia, try improving your diet. Researchers at the Rush University Medical Center in Chicago developed a diet that has been associated with a lower risk of those diseases. It includes green leafy vegetables and other vegetables, berries, nuts, whole grains, poultry, fish, and more. But the researchers say you should avoid red meat, butter, and stick margarine, cheese because of its high level of saturated fat, pastries and sweets, and fried or fast food. And you can find out more about this diet by going to cbnnews.com. Well, that's it for now on CBN NewsWatch. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. And tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here. You can do that on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day, and God bless.